This was not a one-off. They will do this again. They'll do it to us. They'll do it to Germany. They'll do it to France. This is an attack on liberal democracy.
John Sapichetti, Rick Schaefer. This is Boston Herald Drive on Boston Herald Radio. That was Democratic California Congressman Adam Schiff talking about Donald Trump and the investigation going on to the potential Russian hacking or leaking, which took place throughout the election. We're now joined by Roger Stone, author of the book The Making of the President 2016. Roger, welcome into Boston Herald Radio. How are you?
Great to be here.
Always great to have you on. We'll get into what your book is about, again, The Making of the President 2016. But first of all, your reaction to what Schiff had to say, and also the fact that Julian Assange said that the DNC hacked or leaked did not come from the Russian government. Do you believe what Julian Assange had to say?
I do believe Assange. He's been consistent about that. First of all, no intelligence community report or investigation has yet yielded any proof of Russian hacking. If you read very carefully the transcripts of the Armed Services Committee hearings under John McCain, the CIA has given us a, quote, assessment, close quote. And they went on to say that they couldn't attach the proof to this report because it was confidential. Well, I don't believe the motives of John Brennan, the CIA director, nor the motives of his former sidekick, Mike Morrell, the former assistant director. They have yet to provide to any Republican member of the Senate or House Intelligence Committee proof of hacking. Proof. Not you said it happened, therefore it happened, but proof. I'm not buying either is Donald Trump because they have yet to provide any. It is probable that, particularly because Mrs. Clinton was using an unsecured server, that the emails pertaining to this election were hacked by the Chinese, by the Russians, by the Saudis, by the Israelis, by the North Koreans. Highly likely. But there's no proof, not even today.
Would it be dangerous if there was proof to be that transparent?
Well, let's be clear about when we say hacked, we do not mean accessed the computerized voting machines, because they indeed are not networked to each other, never mind centrally networked to any one place. As you pointed out, Craig Murray, a British ambassador, has admitted that he himself is the source who passed on the DNC Bernie Sanders leaks, that was a human leak to Assange and WikiLeaks, not the fruits of hacking. So, no, I'm really not troubled by the entire thing, because I'm yet to see, other than the frenzy that I think is partisan, any proof that this really happened.
Roger, I agree with you totally regarding what you're saying about the intelligence community. I also, one of the things that is troubling to me is that the media and people in general seem to be turning a blind eye to the fact that the Democrats keep bringing up this hacking, the problem with hacking, even though there is no proof, but they refuse to accept the fact that what was hacked and what was leaked was something that they themselves did wrong.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. This is all an effort to distract from the substance of the disclosures. The point is, Hillary had to cheat in order to beat Bernie Sanders. They screwed this poor guy, and they got caught. They don't want to talk about that, so they talk about where this leak came from. Well, I believe this young man, Seth Rice, who took 3 bullets to the back, I think he is the leaker. I think Assange made that pretty clear when he posted a $10,000 reward for the capture of whoever killed him. The Washington Post keeps insisting it was a robbery, but I interviewed his father, who said that his wallet and his money and his jewelry was intact. No evidence that this was, in fact, a robbery.
Now, have you been in contact at all with Julian Assange through an intermediary recently?
I have not. This is another, I think, point of distortion. I said from the beginning that we had a mutual friend, and this mutual friend had told me that Assange was in possession of unspecified political dynamite, information that would roil the political race and adversely affect Hillary Clinton. They never told me what the substance of this was. They never told me their plan or schedule for release. They never told me the subject matter. The idea that I knew about the hacks into John Podesta's account in advance are false. My tweets twitting Podesta on his Eastern European business dealings, based on my own research in a piece that I published at Stone Cold Truth regarding his money laundering for the Russian mob and the Clinton Foundation, and which you can clearly see none of that information came from or emanated from WikiLeaks. This is my independent research.
Roger, obviously you knew and worked for President Nixon, who today would have been 108 if he was still with us. He obviously opened up communication with China and the Soviet Union 45 years ago. What would he think of Trump's apparent bromance with Vladimir Putin at this point?
I think he'd be very much in favor of it because Trump favors détente with the Russians. He wants to have a dialogue, hard-headed negotiations, and perhaps we can team up to destroy ISIS, who is our real enemy. I think Nixon would admire that kind of brinkmanship, that kind of statesmanship. The alternative, of course, is war over Syria. Now, that makes no sense to me because I don't see our friends in this conflict. Assad is a dictator, and he finances Hezbollah, propped up by the Russians. And, of course, the opposition is propped up by ISIS and the Saudis. Saudis aren't our friends either. So who is our friend in this conflict that is worth spending American dollars and American blood for? The idea of a no-fly zone over Syria is an invitation for World War III. Is Obama out of his mind?
I agree with you 100%. It makes no sense at all. And when Hillary Clinton called for that during the campaign, I thought she was nuts. Changing gears a little bit, on your book, do you get into how strange this election was? And that I think you can make an argument this was the most unusual, strangest election we've had in American history?
Well, unusual, strange, those are all great words, and I think that really sums it up. No, my book, The Making of President 2016, which you can actually pre-order on Amazon or Barnes & Noble right now, it really tells the story of the greatest single political upset in U.S. political history. It is really the definitive account of how Trump pulled off this victory in the face of enormous odds and being widely overspent by his opponent, and how the perfect storm was really created. There's a lot of inside information here, as well as a look at the larger trends in the country, which I think for the first time we reached a tipping point in which the mainstream media lost their monopoly control of information dissemination for the first time ever, and alternative media, radio shows like this one, for example, come into their own in terms of communications with voters and mass-based communication. So unlike the old days when ABC, CBS, NBC, when they controlled the narrative because there was no one else, today our information reception on politics is much broader, more people getting their information from their handheld device and the internet and so on. This has democratized our process with a small d.
We're chatting with Roger Stone, author of the book, The Making of the President 2016. Roger, in the end, why do you think Donald Trump was able to pull off this upset?
Because I think the people are tired of the two-party duopoly that has been running the country and candidly has run the country into the ditch. Because the voters finally figured out whether it is the policies of Bush or Clinton or Bush or Obama, they are essentially the same. Endless war, erosion of our civil liberties, massive debt and spending, a trade policy that puts us at a huge disadvantage, and a foreign policy that's at best incoherent, but at worst extremely expensive and ineffective. The voters have had it. They're done. They're finished. And they finally, for the first time, they figured out that big media is in bed with the big establishment and big government. They're all in it together. And the media has really been covering up for the politicians. They want something new. They want a strong leader who is not beholden to anybody, and I think that is Trump's great strength.
Do you think this will lead possibly to a third party that actually is a a third party that can stand up, if you will, to the Democrats and the Republicans, or do you believe in 4 years we're going to go back to the way it used to be?
Well, Trump's nomination, in my opinion, was the hostile takeover of one of the two major parties. I think the legal obstacles to a new party are really substantial. Remember, the people who write the rules for getting a party on the ballot, for example, and nominating candidates are the Republicans and Democrats working together to try to eliminate the competition. So the real question is, will Trump, like all Republican presidents before him, Lincoln, McKinley, Eisenhower, Nixon, Reagan, so on, remake the party in his own image? Theodore Roosevelt certainly did. I think Trump is likely to. So I think the party is what will change. We'll go from being more of less of a country club party and more of a working class party.
Confirmation hearings begin this week in Washington for Donald Trump's cabinet. Who's his best cabinet choice and who's been his worst cabinet choice, you think, so far?
Well, I'm not foolish enough to tell you which one I don't like. Actually, I like all of them. I like Jeff Sessions. He is not a racist. That's a bum rap. I think he will be a good attorney general. I'm a little concerned about his position on legal marijuana in the 37 states where it's currently legal. I do think Tillerson is a brilliant outside-the-box choice. It's funny, Tillerson gets criticized by the media because he knows Putin. Well, that's exactly the point. Trump picked him because he knows Putin, and it's time to have a dialogue. It's time to start seeing if we can negotiate a peace rather than a war. So I think Tillerson is a masterstroke in terms of an appointment.
Do you think it'll be an easy confirmation for Rex Tillerson? Most of the people in Washington who've been wrong for a year and a half think it's going to be pretty contested.
I think it's going to be bruising. I think Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are going to give no quarter. They see an opportunity for a political payback. And to keep their campaign coffers full, they need to really challenge the Trump administration. I think they'll do so. At the same time, I think Tillerson will be confirmed.
Roger, you mentioned your concern about Jeff Sessions very large, being very largely against legalizing marijuana. A lot of people are afraid that he will use the federal government's power to go after people who use it in states which have legalized it. Do you think he'll actually go that far?
That would be an economic disaster. First of all, I think we have to recognize with 37 states now having some form of legal marijuana, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that employs hundreds of thousands of people, and which is propping up the state governments in places like Colorado and Washington State and other places. These states now have surpluses. They're now using the money for their schools, their roads, their bridges, and other things. They're counting on this money. They have budgeted for this money. They have a regulatory scheme in all 37 of these states to sell or dispense marijuana based on state law. So if Sessions were to suddenly decide to reverse the decision of the Obama Justice Department, which currently has essentially agreed just stand down to not enforce federal law in those states regarding possession and trafficking and so on, it would be an economic disaster above all. Trump has said repeatedly himself that he's a states' rights man and that this issue should be up to the individual states. To me, that would be a clue to Jeff Sessions that he should continue the government's current policy.
Two final questions, Roger, before we let you go. First of all, your reaction to Meryl Streep's statement last night at the Golden Globes.
Oh, how politically correct, how very fashionable, and how great it is that she got her mug on the tube. Next.
Do you have any problem, though, with celebrities opining on politics, whether you agree with them or not?
Well, no, because we have something called the First Amendment, which is the greatest thing ever. And therefore, anybody is entitled to make a fool of themselves, even Meryl Streep.
And before we let you go, any role for Roger Stone in a Trump administration?
Gadfly, outsider, Trump cheerleader.
That sounds good.
Look, I'm entirely unconfirmable, so don't look for me to get any high-level government. Well, I have lived too colorful a lifestyle, shall we say. But no, I'm going to be on the outside.
Who's it,
supporting Donald Trump, supporting a reform agenda.
who's it said that it's great when a man knows his limitations?
That's right.
Clint Eastwood.
Yes, exactly. That's why we like having you on at least once a month. We don't have to go through the proper channels to get you on. Anybody that has a Richard Nixon tattoo on his back is okay with me.
Well, it's a daily reminder.
Yeah.
It's really not a political statement. People think it's ideological or something. It really isn't. What it is a daily reminder for me that in life, when things don't go your way, when you get knocked down, when you lose again and again, but you keep trying, you have an obligation to get back in the game, that you should never quit. Never, never, never quit. A man is not finished when he's defeated. He's only finished when he quits. Richard Nixon.
And today would have been his 108th birthday, and I think he's one of the most underrated presidents in our history. I really do. He accomplished a lot.
Happy birthday, Richard Milhouse Nixon.
And thank you so much for joining us today, Roger Stone. Again, the book, The Making of the President 2016. Go online, Amazon or Barnes & Noble. It comes out in stores when? Right around...
January 31st.
Okay,
it
so
will be widely available.
Okay, the end of the month. And, of course, your other books, The Clintons' War on Women, as well as Jeb and the Bush Crime Family. Roger, thank you so much for joining us.